Someone should be, yeah. All right, so I'd like to call to order the December 3, 2024 meeting of the Lower Stafford Township Board of Supervisors and ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of one nation under God. Thank you. That brings us to our first public comment period. Is there anyone wishing to be recognized? Seeing no one, we'll move on. Public Works Director, Mr. Jones.
Good morning. Thank you. Just an update on some projects. The Bergie Mill Road Bridge, the crossroad side of the span, that section of the span was removed a couple of weeks ago. And today they're scheduled to remove the Holloman Road side of the old span. So, got Grace out there, hopefully taking some video that we can post it online and on our website. So should be some good footage. So that's happening today. Roberts Road Bridge, no update at this point. I have to reach out to the county and see if I can get an update on their plans. Yoder Road sidewalk, the two trees that are in the way of the proposed sidewalk are scheduled to be January. Stephanie and her team are progressing with the design for that. Main Street sidewalk, still waiting to hear about the issues with Smile Realty. So that's ongoing.
Is that holding anything up at this point?
I think Stephanie, you could probably better answer that.
Yeah. At this point, no, we've submitted the final plans. We had a PennDOT review. The PS&E is scheduled for early January, pending any comments on this last submission. And advertisement is scheduled in early 2025. So, it's not holding anything up at the moment, but we're showing everything in the right of way, so it could proceed without any issue.
What's when will it hold something up? If we want to, if ever. I mean, if the way we want to design it, I understand we can put it all in the right of way, but the way that it maybe should be designed, is there the preferred alternative? Does it ever?
Well, right now it's all within the right of way because we cannot do anything outside with PennDOT's eyes. So that's how it is proceeding through their review process, is within the right of way. So it could move forward. It'll just be a matter of PennDOT doesn't care about the funding reimbursement of this piece of sidewalk. Right. So it's
designed, it would be more expensive for Smile Realty than the way they want to design it.
I don't think it's going to be that really any more expensive in the grand scheme of things, based on the information we've seen.
Is there a impediment, a pressure point we can put into the negotiations that says if we don't get this resolved by this date, we are moving forward this way, and this is the way it's going to work out? That way, we give Andy and some of those guys some leverage to wrap it up.
I think that's what Andy's been trying to do based on our conversations in the last month and a half with him. I think the challenge is getting the responses from the other side.
Okay.
I know, excuse me, sorry. I know that the staff has been speaking with the Smile. I don't know if there's any way that we could implement some kind of financial, like a payment plan or something like that to make it work, or is that something that's out of the question altogether?
I don't know what's Andy's. I mean, have we offered the payment plan, or
I don't believe so. No.
Okay, we're expecting to pay the full price.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, we can obviously
always
put something together.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any objection to that either if that gets it resolved.
And keeping in mind, full price is based on the bids that we receive for the quantities and the items related to their sidewalk, right? So everybody can come up with various estimates currently at the time. Some may be conservative, some may be low, but in the end, when the bids come in, we would be looking at those items and those unit prices and calculate their cost at that point.
I think if were able to do some kind of payment plan, the only thing I would like to see is just to make sure that they would probably stick with the plan that we had. I know that they had different ideas, but I think if we were able to get some payment plan to get it moving, if it comes down to a time constraint, as Supervisor Canavan said, when we get to that point, they would have to do the plan that we agree upon.
Well, currently, that is the only plan that's being reviewed and approved by PennDOT. So if
Perfect.
there was any other plan in place, which was similar to if we stopped our work at each property line, then they would have to come in and tie into that, which is the plan we provided Andy to give them for them to look at that design, but I don't believe he's received anything back. And at that point, that work would have to happen after the township's project, so that they would tie in appropriately to those two locations.
Thank
But-
you.
Thanks, Deb.
Okay, Public Works and Community Center facilities, working through the latest revision of the community center concept plan. It's been a very arduous process at this point, so we're trying to push that along. Grant projects, 63 and 113 signal project. This is the Green Lake Go grant. Final inspection was held on the 27th of November. 30-day test was initiated. Adaptive system is now running. It was not before. If there's any issues or concerns with traffic, please let me know and I'll reach out.
Can I just add one more thing, Doug?
Sure.
The other part is we are doing the as-built to reflect the license plate readers. And then PennDOT did agree to lower the min time from 20 seconds to 10, which was based on Keith, our discussion about that delay when it was working in time-based coordination. So I think with those couple changes, everything hopefully will be,
That's the minimum then?
Minimum
10?
read time.
yes.
It's gonna be off peak. It's good, yeah, it'll be off peak.
Yeah, it's off peak and it's, I think you'll see an improvement in that.
And what was the update on the LPR?
We have to update the as-built plan to reflect those on the permit. Now that I believe PennDOT is fine with the submission that was made with the documentation that we provided. So now that the final inspection is done, the as-built plan will be done and those will be shown on that.
But the LPR, they're still waiting for, I think, a switch. And
Higgins
some other
suggested that
Oh, okay.
put something in the cabinet. I hope she meant, they meant, Plate Logic
yes,
has to.
Yes, Plate
And
Logic does.
I reached out to Plate Logic twice, but he is very, he's taking every year. I don't know if it's just a switch he has to install.
there's a switch.
Sorry, Doug, you were breaking up if,
There's just something in the cabinet.
Yeah, they get-
Leak the connection.
Which I believe it was like
I don't mind harassing the guy. I just want to make sure that it's.
apparently it was scheduled, according to Higgins, last week at our inspection, they were scheduled to be out there this week to do that day.
Okay.
So hopefully that gets that issue resolved as well. So we're on schedule for a project closeout by the end of this year.
I would just add that I'm also working with Grace for the reimbursement of that for the Green Light Go. So it would be a full, it's going to cover the full amount, obviously, for that Green Light Go.
Excellent. I like the sounds of that.
So moving on, the Arley grant project for the bike lanes, contracts are in place and Bowman's gearing up for spring work on that. That done, 2025 Green Lake Go scoping form has been submitted. This is for the modernization for the signals at Main and Walmart and then at Main and Call. The 2025 LSA grant application was submitted. This was for the impound garage and the police canopy. Just some department activities, Park Avenue Fields, we installed growth blankets on the field to promote grass growth, obviously, and hopefully get them in a better condition for the spring for girls lacrosse to play. Old Skipback Road at Ross Mill Road, we corrected an underground groundwater bleed out issue on the road and potential icing problem. Installed about 500 lineal feet of under drain going up the hill and then discharge it into a swale on Ross Mill Road. So that should resolve that issue. today we're correcting another potential icing issue on Freeman School Road at Southwoodville. Another situation where water's coming out of the road, running down that little hill as it approaches Southwoodville, and this time of year we get problems. James House, the golf course, electric's been disconnected. We're in the process, we've winterized the inside, water heater, disconnect the water connection. So this all in hopes of having that house demolished, and I believe it's a discussion item for the rec authority.
The Historical Society, I think, wanted some doors out of there. Are they successful in getting them out or?
I don't think anything's been removed yet,
Okay.
so.
They have been made aware.
Probably have to make
Sooner
them
rather
aware
than later.
again, just to make sure we're all,
For urgency.
the clock is ticking.
On the adapt, I don't know. But before I forget, the adaptive, this whole, obviously, I had my phone, we're not able to see anything. We used to see it really. Now there's nothing, and there was a long discussion about a parallel glass path that would not infringe on the PennDOT glass. And there were, the last I recall was site visits to confirm what kind of switches, to make sure they weren't 10-100, there should be gig. Phrases that I never thought I would say. But
You sounded like you know what you're talking about there. I like that.
and it's correct, right, Sven?
You might not be hearing.
You're muted.
Muted.
Sorry. I'm gonna need to follow up with Helen, and let's see what they say. I'm at a little bit of a loss between the current situation and then where we're headed with TST, because that project is going, but it's not in, obviously none of those new switches have been installed yet. So, they've got to go ahead and we're waiting for them to start their work. But
Just a comment made at the signal inspection last week from Signal Control Products, that they are in the middle of the transition from the existing adaptive to the adaptive system. And,
okay,
Tom Kernick made the comment that, yeah, nothing's really working 100% at this point. So that may be part of the issue.
Okay.
Well, that's about 10 years.
let me follow up. I will follow
follow-
up on that side and see if we can get something in the interim.
Doug, quick question to James House too. It would be appropriate to have you talk to the fire company so they could have some practice nights in there before
Right.
the demo would come. So, and I don't know if I know SWAT team.
Yeah, they
sometimes
occasionally
look-
look
yeah,
for-
Well, two bites, one would be the house and the other would be the barn.
yeah.
So two opportunities there.
You may not need to take it down yet, but it's on.
Do not let them do that. It costs so much more from a demo standpoint. Very specific protocol. We look at it.
So that's about just keeping an eye on winter. Mother Nature is.
Maybe a little Wednesday night.
We're actually gonna do a test run brine application on Wednesday just to make sure everything's working right. And just a little gentle reminder for the winter's here. So that's all that I have. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Doug.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Couple
Stephanie.
things for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're muted again, Steph.
Sorry, I keep trying to keep myself in check here. All right, so am I ready? Okay. All right. So I'm here this morning just to talk about the Culp Road Sidewalk Alternatives Project. Mike, if you don't mind, you could bring up that plan that I sent over. And so now's the time of year as we move into the beginning of the year. There's some obviously grant program opportunities, and I wanted to I guess bring everybody up to speed with the coordination that's been happening for this potential project. And this project is the sidewalk connection along Culp Road as it intersects with Yoder Road. And this was discussed at the Trail and Sidewalk Committee a few months ago, and At that time, we discussed reaching out to Franconia Township because the project would extend into Franconia Township. If you go to the right, there is the township line. Where the green and the orange end, that's essentially the township line. So in order to make it continuous and extend into that existing sidewalk, it would need to overlap in Franconia Township. So at the time, the committee asked the township staff to reach out to Franconia Township just to gauge their interest on sharing with this project. And Joe, I believe you spoke with John Hammer, and I believe that they were positive at that time at understanding this would be a good connection, and that they were open to collaborating, I'll say, on the project. So from there, we did do cost estimates for both alternatives, which I'll discuss. And then we also essentially calculated what the township share for each Lower Salford and Franconia Township would be. So as with anything, there's pros and cons to both alternatives that we looked at. And the first one, option A, would maintain the existing curb line along Culp Road. That would be the orange sidewalk. Because that sidewalk is set back, the orange sidewalk would be set back, and it puts the sidewalk closer to the line of trees that we were concerned about along the corner property. Would those trees be absolutely impacted? You know, we don't know that, except there's a limit of disturbance that does get close, obviously to the second tree, and then obviously the root system may be within that area as well. So because the simple solution might have impact on the trees, we looked at what could be option B, which was adjusting the roadway curb line, because it is pretty wide in that area, to try to make it more of a consistent width where it would tie in at the limit of work in Franconia Township. And that would push the sidewalk a little further away from the trees, and that's the green line of sidewalk. So you would have the blue curb line and the green sidewalk, and that would give increased width from the row of trees that are along that corner property. So those are essentially the two scenarios. If you scroll to the right, Mike, you can see how the blue curb line, keep going, please. All the way to the limit. There we go. The blue curb line would also extend into Franconia Township and tie in, keep going a little bit further, would tie into that existing curb line that is there today with the existing sidewalk. So that being said, we did the two cost estimates, and to give you order of magnitude, option A looks essentially like around an $85,000 match for Lower Salford and a $30,000 match for Franconia. That's assuming a Greenways Trails grant of $250,000. So we would be looking at a total project cost in the $365,000 range. And again, I just want to stress these costs are done today, but they're assumed, 2 to 3 years out because of the time it takes to apply and receive a grant and then implement a grant. So they are escalated. And then option B, we would be looking more at a $500,000 cost, which would with a $250,000 Greenways Trails, would increase the Lower Salford contribution to being roughly 187, and then the Franconia at 70. And that's basically a straight up, percentage. We looked at obviously how much was within each township. That one I would suggest, could have an additional funding source, kind of similar to what we did for Yoder Road, and that could help, the match amounts if that was desired. So it's roughly a 73-27 split, right? Percentage wise by, for each township. And I don't believe, Joe, we didn't have these numbers, and we didn't actually discuss dollars with Franconia Township yet. But these are the two scenarios. Obviously, both would have ramps and crossings at the intersection.
Stephanie, the utility poles that are along the roadway there, it looks like in the green scenario, the sidewalk is affecting those. Would we obviously
Yeah,
design?
yeah, we
scenarios
would,
where-
we would design around those. We couldn't,
Okay, so we wouldn't
we
be
could,
relocating those.
no, no, no. We would,
Okay.
we could either decrease the buffer, as we go around those poles. Again, this was high level and we would not, there would be no reason to need to move those poles.
Other question is, I know in certain places where you have limited right of way or other things, we've done it. Was there an analysis looked at of just running the sidewalk directly behind the curb? A 5-foot sidewalk along the curb is acceptable. Or you could even increase it to 6 foot, but just, and not have the grass strip so that you don't have to put a new curb in, but you also keep the construction further away from the, trees.
I mean, we could certainly look at that. I don't think that the cost would be much different. Just in that we weren't touching the curb in option A, so we could reduce that buffer. If that was desired, obviously it might have to, there may be some things we would have to go around like that pole, particularly at that driveway. But I don't think it would change the cost all that much and we could certainly do that. We would be gaining what, maybe 3 or 4 feet.
Right. It just help those
No.
trees, that's all.
Sure.
But another option we could explore, the trail committee, and I will say I'm part of the trail committee and it was discussed. I was the one who was more against this idea. Because I think another option that we could look at, as Stephanie mentioned earlier, this is very wide here. We could always look at the option of a bike lane. And my reasoning for that as well, similar to what we're looking at, is I know that as of and no offense to, I know Stephanie, but as of November 1st, our last budget read that the engineering services were already 130% above budget with that. I think we have a lot of great opportunities for sidewalk, but to put the money here, I don't see it as much of a necessity. I know that the landowner there is not for this. We know that, we've had the experience. I don't see the need we need to put it there because I have a hard time seeing how this spot would be advantageous to our residents at this moment. I know it serves Franconia because Franconia then can come into Lower Salford. If they go to our businesses, that's wonderful. But at the same time, I just don't think we have the funds to do this right now. And I think we could always explore the bike lane option. And if Franconia wants to contribute money, I'd rather have them contribute to our ambulance fund.
What was the recommendation of the committee though, Kevin?
They put their top preferences. This was one of the ones that was higher. I did miss the last meeting, I will say that. However, again, I said at the trail committee, or I said there too, I was not a fan of this. I asked to see if we could see a pricing for a bike lane because also, and I'll tell you, I was home with my kids and I understand, there's great places to walk around, but we have a connection in Eastwoods to connect into that Franconia community. And again, I just don't see, I think this is a great thing to have down the line to connect the community, bring people to walk to our community center. We have a lot of options there, but we could always explore the option of a bike lane right now to do that and complete that same idea.
Is there any reason the road is that wide there to begin with?
It widened to the full extent when that land development went through.
Is that what it is?
That's all it was. Yeah, I mean, an on-road trail / bike lane, I have no issue with. I've seen it work successfully. You just stripe it appropriately.
We're doing it all over.
I'd be happy.
That's
to-
just not, it's not, that would not cover your pedestrian connection into the sidewalk. And I'm not sure where the bike lane would end. It would have to end in Franconia Township. The road narrows and it's not as wide to accommodate. As
Right
much
now,
width.
Right now, Franconia has a sidewalk coming down that just ends. I mean, I'd be okay
Mhm.
with just ending right there.
Mike, can you go back to the intersection? Steph, question about those ped cross. Is that assuming that the stop sign configuration remains as it is today?
Yes. Yes. Which I see we have the stop bar on the wrong side on that plan.
Everything.
Thinking we need to flip that. But yeah, it would be a stop on Culp and a stop on Yoder.
Not doing it.
safety standpoint, putting the, any benefit to, what used to be the full bypass and stopping Yoder. And now we meet the signs, explanatory signs about which approaches stop and which don't. Any appetite or benefit for three-way stops?
We would have to look at the warrants for a three-way stop at that location and see how it works with the adjacent intersection. I mean, I really can't say if
Yeah, I'm thinking if you did one, you'd do both.
yeah, I think you'd have to do both.
Any pro or con.
If it's warranted, I would say. I mean, we're already putting in sidewalk coming down Yoder, right? So you're gonna, right. So this would just be a continuation of connecting other sidewalk, you know.
This is not unlike Clemson Yoder,
Yeah.
which I now watch on camera. They should probably stop. Just by the number of,
Near misses.
Let's watching them. Yeah. On a leg that does not stop.
Right.
So it gets interesting, and at some point, do we make that a three-way stop? Hijack the conversation, but it's a similar traffic flow. They'll at least hit each other at lower speeds.
Right. I have I mean, I think it might be worth at least the third alternative of what's the cost to do a striping pattern in the shoulder, just to. I mean, we're spending a lot of money on a lot of these projects, and it's great to get the grant money and all for it, but I can look at it both ways then at that point.
Agreed.
And that's kind of my thought process. Again, I like the idea of having people be able to come to our township, visit our businesses, come to our community events. I think that we could also do it, again, with the Eastwoods connection back there that connects to that community. Yeah, there's really nothing to walk to from our township, but yeah, I'd like just to see the other option. And thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I think, Kevin, the other thing I'd say is I do know, I mean, obviously with that one development in Franconia, all those kids go to the same elementary school as the kids in the adjacent neighborhood there, so they could connect at Eastwoods, but it also gets them, you know, it's that interconnectivity between, it's a similar elementary school boundary, even though it crosses municipal boundaries. So there is, I think, a benefit from Lower Salford residents to be able to get to that development as well.
It is a more practical.
Yeah.
That's a great point that I didn't consider, and thank you for that option.
Yeah.
I still like to see option 3 knowing that. I like the connectivity, but
Yeah.
thank you for
Oh,
pointing
no,
that out.
either way.
Definitely. Good point, though.
A defined and safe path, even if it's a little, it's not the ideal, it's still a defined and safe path. We've done it all over the place, so.
Can I ask a question about option 3? If
Yeah.
option 3 is an on-road bike lane, I have to look at it for a bike lane on both sides?
Oh,
Because
Okay,
I can't have the opposite flow for a bike lane on the one side.
does it have to be a bike lane? Can it just be an on-road trail?
I have to have a separation from the travel lane if it's an
Well, that's what you've
on-road
got a
trail.
large shoulder, you've got a large shoulder on the one side. That if you do a 4-foot on-road trail and then gore it between the remainder, does that work for you?
I do need a 5-foot separation from the travel lane to the on-road trail. I cannot propose pedestrians or some people walking in the road without a physical barrier or an adequate buffer. So if we're talking a bike lane, I need to look at putting a bike lane on each side for each direction. If we're talking an on-road trail that would allow for PEDs, then I have to look at what physical barrier or buffer would need to be provided if I don't have adequate space. And I'm afraid that I don't have adequate space, but I'll have to look a little bit closer at that. Whether that's just the nature of putting PEDs in the road. I have to have something to protect them.
Okay, we're doing it now.
Well, sounds like.
It is all true, that was all very, PennDOT.
Sounds like a bike lane.
It's not PennDOT, that's just an ASHTO requirement. And quite frankly, as the designer, I can't put PEDs in the road without some protection. So that's where I'm at. Like, I can do it if I have an adequate buffer, or we have some physical barrier, or we do bike lanes in each direction. But I can't just put them in the road without.
That's the best you get.
I guess, Stephanie, I've seen trails where you have like a foot or two of a grass strip between the edge of the roadway and the walking trail. Is that the separation you're talking about?
Technically, you need 5 feet from the,
Okay.
you need 5 feet to meet any ASHTO requirement for that condition. I'm not
So
saying
I'm
it's
just
not
thinking-
done by, I'm not saying it's not been done by others in a situation, but I can't comfortably and rightly do that without some type
I'm
of
thinking of
protection.
Treble Road over in Tellamenson where they installed that new walking trail along there and it narrows down to almost a 6-inch grass strip. So
That I can tell you that was not our project. I'll have to take a look and see how that looks, but I'm just throwing it out there so that we all understand what constraints we will have when I look at that third scenario, and I want to make sure we look at what is being asked.
time constraint on this decision.
Is there?
There is none. All right.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Take it back to the trail committee and let them.
Yeah, I'd say
put forth
why
a
don't
recommendation.
let the trail committee have a little bit more chewing on this.
Okay. That we
That
can
good for you,
absolutely do.
Kevin?
That we can absolutely do.
That works. I appreciate it. And to be fair, like I said, I was the one naysayer on the trail committee. Everybody likes the idea of the connection, but I was looking at it from a cost perspective, other options. So thank you, Stephanie, for checking that out.
Sure.
Dover Road Bridge design proposal.
Okay. Stover Road Bridge, that's me. So as everybody's aware, the municipal bridge award was made for the Stover Road Bridge replacement. We did provide a proposal to the township for what we're calling a preliminary engineering phase 1A essentially, and that's really so that we can complete survey, obviously right of way, do the initial hydraulics calculations, look at the floodplains. Really what we need to do is determine the size that is of the opening that is required for the structure and the type of structure, because at this point we've assumed a beam bridge, but that may not be necessary. And that would be a cost savings, but we need to know the hydraulics of the situation, and we need to make sure we can have an opening that is adequate, because as you all may recall, we are in the 100-year floodplain. And we're going to have similar constraints as we had with Alderfer Road Bridge. So we want to look at that first. We want to make sure the environmental side of things is dealt with, and we know what we can and can't touch. And then from there, we would basically included in here would be establishing our geometrics for the road, you know, the profile, depending on the opening size, the height of where we would have to take the road limits, look at the culvert that's at the one end of the project, make sure we can accommodate that. And then obviously anything done here would move it forward into a final design phase once we know the type of structure. So that was the intent with this phased proposal approach. Simply because scoping it for the entire project without knowing the type of structure is just not helpful to anybody. Because we have to make a lot of assumptions at that point. So at this point, we did have a schedule that we posted in there that would meet the timeline for the municipal bridge program, which is required to be done by August of 2028. And it's on a first come, first served basis. So the sooner you can move forward your project and then submit for that reimbursement, you know, the more quickly you would receive those funds. So the schedule really does look at between January and August, September of 2025 doing the preliminary engineering. Final design would take us from September to June of 2026. And it's I say conservative, but I mean, I think we could probably go a little quicker. And then July 2026, we would advertise, and construction would be from October 2026 to December 2027, leaving project closeout and reimbursement to happen in early, the first half of 2028, which meets the municipal bridge schedule, by a few months at that point.
Stephanie, my only, and I think we have to get all the data you talked about so we can then have the discussion that I'm gonna just caution on scale. This location, this is one of our more picturesque country roads in the township. We've got the little well house, or what do they call that? The spring house right there, and it's also not a high volume road.
Understood.
when it comes down to it. So from a design standpoint, what it should look like, all those things, I mean, I think we just, obviously scale is a critical aspect of. The Alderford Road Bridge is great, it carries a lot of traffic, that would not look appropriate in this setting.
Completely understood. I think we would be looking at, just for, the approaches would stay very much the same. The shoulders, on the bridge, we do need to accommodate a minimal shoulder, the 4 to 5 foot shoulder that would taper back at the limits of work. So that's going to dictate, obviously, the width. But I don't foresee any other significant, we're not reprofiling Stover Road. We're not widening Stover Road. We're tying into that bridge that needs to be a certain width and meet certain criteria. The spring house, I can't tell you how many projects I have with spring houses. They're not really very much fun to have on your project. But obviously we would not, I foresee that not being allowed to be touched, which is part of the environmental studies. So we would be holding an edge and pushing in one direction. We think it can be a general permit at this point based on the amount we would have to widen. That's what we're assuming. But there's still a lot of questions with the hydraulics, because as we
Yep.
know, the hydraulics is what's going to dictate our opening size. And then depending on what that says, we have to either look at bringing up the height of the roadway profile to get that opening. And we've done that, right? We've done this before and we know what happens, and it's the steps we just need to go through to make sure we can put something in there that will work. And I think if we can do a box culvert, that would be fantastic. I can't commit to that yet because we just don't know. But that would be ideal, and it would be more cost effective, and it would not be as, visually, large as a beam bridge, right? So we understand all of that, and I think we want to make sure that we get to the end result that everybody is hoping and wants to have out there.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
I'm okay moving forward with the design proposal, get this
Yep.
rolling.
Yeah. Well,
Kevin, any feedback on this? You're muted if you're trying to talk. All right. I would entertain a motion to approve the design proposal.
I'll second it.
I have to entertain, I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Evan. Chief, you're up. You're next on the agenda. We made it.
Real brief update, succession plans, last work session. Gave approval to at least identify those names. Year, so all we're able to sit down with all 5 officers that are involved in the process. Sergeant, and everything was well received. We are still on target for March of next year. We're in the process of the additional hire. Applications are open until the first week in January. Somebody ordered prior to that March date, which doesn't have to be March. get somebody in before that, and get them a little bit of orientation before being assigned to a squad, but March looks like the target right now.
Beautiful. Good, sounds good. Any questions for Tom? Mike Buki.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. So for the month of November, we issued 64 building permits, permits total. And that was a downtick from last year, but we're still up in the average this year from last year. There is no zoning hearing board in December. The Board of Supervisors that you have coming up tomorrow, you're going to be looking to appoint to the vacant seat, appoint Terry Crippen to the vacant seat of the planning commission and land development item. We have Shahada, which is 703, 709, really full height plan approvals up for consideration. The next planning commission meeting, we did not have one for November. I know it's November, December joint, and that is going to be next week on Wednesday, December 11th. And we have two items on the agenda there. We have a new 2-lot subdivision proposal at the edge of the township on Moorwood Road at Fallowfield. And that's 1 lot turning into 2. There might be a sliver of land there because of the boundary of the upper Southbury Township and lower Southbury Township, so it might leave a little odd piece, but technically it's a 2-lot subdivision. And the proposed right-of-way amendments that I presented a short while, we're going to be discussing that. And that is all I have for you.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody, any questions? All right. Mr. Jakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. First item on the manager report is review of the November 6th Board of Supervisors meeting minutes. Any questions, corrections,
No, good.
comments?
Nope.
Okay, the next item is review of the agenda for tomorrow evening, December 4th, Board of Supervisors meeting. Under unfinished business, motion to approve and execute the option agreement between Lower Southbridge Township and Lower Southbridge Township Recreation Authority regarding the liquor license transfer. This is the process that's been ongoing. It's been taking some time because of LCB's portion reviewing the application and so forth, but we're ready to move forward with that. The next item is resolution 2024-20. That will be adopting the 2025 municipal budget. Resolution 2024-21, enacting the tax rate assessments for the 2025 calendar year. And resolution 2024-22, preliminary final plan approval and waivers for the Letterack Cross residential development 703 to 709 Harlequin Pike. This is the Shahada subdivision. Under new business, motion to approve fire police assistance at the Southern Fire Company for the holiday parade on December 7th. And finally, the motion to appoint Terry Crippen to the planning commission.
Have there any comments been made on the public comment period for the budget?
There have been.
Thank you. Any questions?
And finally, we do
Board
have
and
a
committee
board
reappointment.
committee
Yep.
reappointments. I believe most of the folks who are up have said that they would like to be reappointed. The only person who has not has been Jean Campbell, and she's on the communications committee and is an alternate for the ZHB.
And with the
We
recreation
have-
authority.
No, and Doug Gifford did submit his resignation as of the 31st for the recreation
Okay.
authority. We have put out information and a notice for these new ones. We've also reached out to the people who had submitted for the planning commission. I don't believe that anybody from the planning commission folks that we reached out to were interested in either the communication or the ZHB at this point. We have received a couple of interested folks for the communications committee and maybe one for the zoning hearing board. We'll compile a list for you. And obviously we just received Doug, so we haven't had any kind of notification put out about that yet.
And we'll discuss it at the work session, second work session. this
Yes.
month. Okay. Very good.
And a very brief executive session for a matter of real estate.
Any other? Kevin, Keith, any
Yes.
other comments?
No, no comments,
No,
though,
I'm
but
good.
I just wanted to hear, I could hear earlier and I was trying to unmute, so thank you, though.
Yep. No problem. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn to an executive session without the intent to return.
I'll make the motion.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Leave that, stop recording it up and running.
Yes,